Now, in the past few years, there's been a gradual just kind of, I would say, decline of the dress watch, not in terms of what is actually being produced, but more in regards to what people think about a dress watch and whether or not they'll actually use one in a modern context. Nowadays, many people are working from home. There's really no need to be dressing up as much anymore. I think we're slowly gonna see maybe that happen a little bit over the next, I'd say, several months, but things have changed, and I think change maybe almost for good for many people out there. So a dress watch with steel sports just continuing to rise in popularity is very much changing. But in this video, I wanted to look at some of the best dress watches at a more attainable price of, say, a more affordable range all the way up to $3,000, because I would say for somebody that maybe isn't needing a dress watch all the time, but just wants to have one for those rare instances, this would be a good range to be looking at. So in this video, we'll be going through a variety of different dress watches, gonna be going through them rather quickly. So if you do wanna see more in detail kind of reviews of some of these watches, we will have any relevant links in the description down below. Also, please leave comments to any other dress watches that you think should be mentioned here. Going to keep it kind of just limited up to $3,000 in price and starting at a more affordable end. Before we jump into this video, 2 quick updates. We do have a giveaway going on right now, so if you want to be entered to win that, free watch up to $1,600, go to teddybaldassarre.com, pick out 3 watches, 3 links, make sure you put them in the form down below, follow all the instructions, and if you are chosen to win, you then can pick out one of those 3 watches to be your own. So definitely good luck to all of you that enter, and definitely enter soon. Also say while you're shopping around on teddybaldassarre.com, definitely take advantage of the book a consultation feature. This is something that I wanted to bring back. So we now have dedicated watch specialists that'll be on the phone ready to take those consultations for you. So if you have a question, you're looking to purchase anything, and you want to talk to somebody who is specialized in that area, definitely jump at that opportunity. The people that are gonna be on the phone have been in the industry for several years, if not over a decade, working at some of the leading brands as well as the leading jewelers. Really wanted to work to make that available, as I think it's really important now with e-commerce, more people buying watches online, to have kind of a personal touch there. So definitely take advantage of that. All right, so now where to begin? All right, in regards to maybe the best entry level dress watch, we can talk about the Orient Bambinos. I've talked about it so many times, so just so the people that don't go crazy in the comments saying I skipped over it, I didn't, I give it acknowledgement, but just to do something a little bit different, let's go with the Orient Maestro. Now the Maestro has been selling out rapidly. As soon as these things kind of came on the scene, I think the 100 meters of water resistance and wearable case sizes made these very attractive, kind of wearing closer to a 38 millimeter. They are probably lacking the personality that comes with a Bambino. The Bambino just feels a bit more like thoughtful in terms of what it's going for. This one, I would say with the Maestro, and I don't mean this as a negative, but kind of a safe design, a very simple design, which could be a good appeal, but also maybe not as appealing for others. But for maybe that first dress watch or watch that also will have some robustness in the area of water resistance, this is definitely one to go for. And I think from a dress watch from a modern context, like we mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is certainly going to be one that kind of can work in those variety of just environments. Now, for those that like vintage proportions and just watches that really key into that aesthetic, I think the Timex Marlin hand winding is going to be the watch that represents this very well from an affordable perspective. In regards to how this watch came on the scene, in 2017, Timex unveiled the reissue of the Marlin hand winding, basically really opening up the floodgates, as you will, for them to create more mechanical watches, and really was that first kind of point in which this kind of all happened. Looking back, it was very well received then, it's still well received now. Now there's a variety of different color options to choose from. My personal favorite is kind of that blackout version. I think it just looks really solid. In terms of legibility though, maybe not the best in that arena compared to kind of the traditional silver dial variant, as well as maybe the blues and things of that sort. A lot to choose from here. These are smaller watches, so I do want to be just upfront about that in that just kind of area, because if you are not prepared for what a 34 millimeter watch will look like, then just be ready that it is going to be a small watch. But for those that do have a liking to that size, this is going to be perfect for you. Now, I wanted to minimize the amount of micro brands on this list, but one that I'm a personal big fan of, as well as other people on our team, is the Baltic HMS 002. So this is the sector dial version of this model family, and quite frankly, it looks fantastic. In terms of sector dials, this is kind of a trend. I mean, we're seeing the salmon dial trend. Sector dials is another thing that I am seeing quite a bit more, as we're kind of just in the last, I would say, past couple of years, I would say at least. But I'm all for it. I am on this bandwagon completely, and this is probably one of the best I would say, more attainable options in this arena. Now, Baltic originally came on the scene in their work that they've done with their dive watches, so the Aquascap as well as the Bicompacts, so kind of more vintage appeal with those designs. And the same is going to be said here. Baltic, do they have the most original designs out there in terms of what they're delivering? No, but I think they do it so well consistently at a price range that is, from a build quality standpoint, where they really do stand out and shine. Very good watches, and this is one for a sector dial on a budget. This is definitely one to include here. All right, so just so it doesn't turn into a Seiko video, I'm only going to mention a couple Seiko watches here. Of course, though, just go through a quick list of some of them. Of course, you can go for the cocktail times, the different Sarbs, the Sarkses. You also could look at some of the new sharp edge models from Seiko with the SPB 167, which we've reviewed and did side by side against the Tissot Gentleman. So definitely check out that video as well. But I'm gonna be looking at two other watches that really wowed me this year in terms of their dial finishing and what they're delivering in that arena. These are some of the best looking dials that I've seen from Seiko in quite some time, and that's really saying something, of course. That is the SRPF 4.1 and also the SRPF 5.3. So these are just basically two different takes. So the 4.1 is going to be a dial design. It's green, that is inspired by matcha tea, and it really does kind of embody that type of aesthetic and looks fantastic. If you see this thing up close with a macro lens, it really is leaving a lot of just other brands in the dust in regards to what is happening on the dial surface. The color, the finishing, the different kind of shades that you're gonna be seeing there, as well as the texture, absolutely a winning formula. Then you also have the SRPF 5.3. So this has this light blue, kind of granular texturized finish. And why I like this one so much is, of course, the color, but also that texture and how it really is embodied by the entire design itself. So the markers on the dial as well are gonna have that same matching finish. In terms of legibility, maybe this isn't the best thing, but I like the case design as well with this. It's a little bit different and distinct in the marketplace. The SRPF 4.1 is really true to the kind of more cocktail time family in regards to that case architecture. This one's a bit more unique in what it's going for. Both of these two representations. Seiko, of course, yes, you can mention in this video. Here are just two options that I would include for dress watches. Now, next up, I'm going to be looking at two different Tissot watches. Now, both of these lines have a new variant available, and it's not even a new variant, it's just simply a refresh of the design family, the Tissot Visitate and the Belade. So if you're familiar with either of those, you are probably familiar with the Visitate, which would have had that kind of classic retro design that would be seen in the logo especially. It's still remaining, except it has now gotten a bit of a modification and also a larger case now at 42 millimeters, which I know many people are not as happy about. So just know that the 40 millimeter option is on its way out. That is going to be discontinued. So if you're wanting to get one of those, definitely act fast. I think both of them definitely do the job depending on your wrist size. It just really does depend. I think more people probably in the audience that watches this gonna like the 40 millimeter more, so just want to bring that to the attention. And then you also have the Tissot Belade. Now, both of these watches are, I say, some of the better Swiss-made dress watches in the range. The Belade is going to have more of that up spec. So you're getting the up Powermatic 80 movements. So this is a higher grade Tissot Powermatic 80 with a cost certified movement as well, under $1,000. There's a lot to like there. The thing that changed here is the bezel. So the old version that had more of that kind of like knurling, kind of like style bezel along the outside is now being replaced more with a fluted bezel, which of course is going to be pulling a bit more inspiration from we know where, but it is still going to deliver a lot of the value that comes with the Belade family. These two lines have been favorites of mine. There are seeing changes for 2021. I think probably adapting to be a bit more casual on both ends, but certainly two watches to include here if you're looking at just dress watches in this range. Now, next up, we have the Bulova Breton. So this is a member of the Joseph Bulova collection. Joseph Bulova, the founder of the brand back in the 1800s. He was a US immigrant, and really allowed the brand to be a strong, just trailblazer in the industry in regards to marketing as well as the different products that they were creating. And this watch really embodies that kind of Art Deco styling as the brand was kind of rising the ranks and becoming very much a part of Americana culture during the period. So this has more of that tonneau style case, but the hands that you're also seeing on this, as well as the dial, I think is the star of the show. You're getting a lot of uniqueness, Swiss caliber inside here, so you're getting SW200, so good value here when you're looking at the price range under $1,000 for this movement, this distinct case design. This is not gonna be for everybody. It is a bit different in terms of the actual width of the case. It's gonna be 32 millimeters. Lug to lug gonna wear a little bit longer than that. Of course, at 46 millimeters, so probably wearing closer to a 38 millimeter case equivalent if you had to put it towards a circular case. But I love the rich kind of color of the dial with kind of those glossy black hands. This is a personal favorite of mine. I know the application of this in 2021 might not be as strong as it was in years prior, but if you're going for that Art Deco classic styling, this is definitely one to mention. So know how I mentioned talking about salmon, champagne style dials as being a big trend? You're seeing that more here with the Hamilton American Intramatic champagne dial. So the Intramatic collection really just looks back towards the 1960s and what it's trying to embody. And the distinctness with this design on two fronts is going to be one, I think the dial color with this, absolutely striking with the design, and just the Intramatic in general with the use of its logo as well as the absence of a second hand. It is different than what you're going to see. This is a full automatic movement. You're getting an ETA 2892, which is basically the thinner, more refined ETA 2824, which is going to allow this watch to wear thin to the wrist. And then in addition to that, be a bit different than what you're gonna see from the many other calibers from Hamilton in this price range. So you're gonna see mostly those 80-hour power reserve movements, which of course have their own upside, but this is a very just solid movement for the money. You're typically seeing these as bases from brands even from Omega, talking about IWC and Breitling. They're all have utilized these ETA 2892s because they are very solid movements, thinner, and bring on a lot of just peace of mind with their execution as well. One point here, compared to the 80-hour power reserve, getting a reduced power reserve here. So typically 42 to 50 hours approximately. Depending on where you look, it's gonna say different things. I find it more towards the larger end of that, so the 50 hours of power reserve. Also comes with regulator pins to fine tune, adjust the movement. But to see that caliber inside a watch under $1,000, pretty rare. And I think when you're seeing on the front end of this watch in terms of what it's doing, very different in kind of how it's going about with the absence of the second hand, and that dial color is certainly striking. Now next up we have Frederique Constant with their Classics Index. So FC is a brand that has a wide range, and I don't think necessarily gets the full appreciation they probably deserve. If you did see their recent release of their new oscillating movement, their high frequency movement, pretty impressive manufacturing. So FC is a serious manufacturer in what they're producing, even on the higher end range, but from the affordable range, this is where you see a ton of great value. Swiss-made products that just look the part. You see a lot of influence from high horology brands like Patek Philippe in some of their designs. And this one I think is just very straightforward dress watch for a solid price. Getting an automatic Sellita SW200, a little bit up water resistance here of 50 meters, so give some more peace of mind. Sapphire crystal, nice wearable dimensions and looks that pretty much could go with essentially everything that you can kind of throw at it. It's kind of more of a safe design, but I think that's partially where the draw to this watch would be in the first place. Speaking of brands that don't necessarily get the appreciation that they deserve, I think Mido also is one of those brands that fits that mold, with the Baroncelli Big Date being our choice here for a watch to recommend. So the Heritage Baroncelli is going to probably be the one that mentioned the most. It's the safest design, but very good dress watch for around $1,000. The Big Date is going to adapt that design and then utilize, of course, a Big Date with its execution to be a bit more distinct. This is something that you're kind of going to see with, say, the likes of Glasuta Originale, Langa utilizing something of this sort. That Big Date is very just iconic in Germanic watchmaking. Mido, in terms of what they're doing here, a very straightforward dress watch design that's going to be very tasteful and utilizing a complication that is going to look the part as well. Now, as we're starting to get to $1,000, going to start seeing some more German brands here, first with Longines. And I don't want to mention the Max Bill. All right, okay, we know it's a great watch. I'll go ahead and just say that, but let's go with something a little bit different here from the brand with the Meister hand winding. So when going with the hand winding, you're gonna get a little bit of a different approach in regards to the design here. It is a little bit of a smaller case and a different case, so 37 millimeters in regards to that case size. We're closer to a 38. The lugs are going to extend out a bit more, and you're not getting more of that bulbous case architecture that comes with the Max Bill, so a bit different here. And also though, much thinner in terms of the case. So you're not getting that crazy domed effect as well. Also, the reason for this is going to be the movement inside, probably one of the best looking movements from a third-party manufacturer with ETA, with the Pazoo 7001. This is a movement that was actually adapted and now constructed in-house by Nomos, because they were kind of not being able to produce the amount of volume that they needed, being reliant on ETA to do it. So they've now done it themselves, but certain brands still utilize this caliber. And this is personally one of my favorite looking just manual wound calibers. No rotor, so you can kind of just see the finishing on it. And for third-party movement, it does look the part. Now, I always appreciate looking at underrated brands, and Germany has a slew of them within the borders of their country. And one of the brands that I think is very much overlooked, I just recently started getting more familiar with their models, and that is Tutima. Today we're gonna be looking at the Sky Automatics. So first, this is a brand that is based out of Glashütte, like many of the classic German watchmakers, and also a brand that has a wide range in what they're doing. You have more affordable options or attainable options. I don't wanna say affordable because usually you're looking around $1,500 is kind of a starting price point to start looking at this brand a bit more. But they do go all the way up to more of high horology pieces, producing high complications and things of that sort. The Sky is kind of more that entry door into the brand. It is going to adapt a lot of just utility with this design as well, getting a day-date function, really clean looking dial. Also coming with a Milanese style bracelet that works very well with the design, but 100 meters of water resistance, sapphire crystal. This is one of those watches that from a modern perspective, why I wanted to include it and kind of spinning this video a bit more for like dress watches in a modern perspective. I think it's important to have watches like these on the list. And if you're trying to go for something different out there, this is, I think, cool to include on a list like this. Now to go into watches that kind of really embody that heritage design, let's look at Longines, and basically could mention, I would say 3 watches here that'd be probably representative of what we're going for. One would be the Heritage Classic Sector that I've reviewed on the channel before. Absolutely adore that watch. Probably my favorite Sector design, all things considered. For those that are, I think, more reasonable in terms of their price, especially. Love the symmetry of that dial. It's just such a rich design in what it's doing. Also, you could look at some other models that are very Longines, true to the archive as well, with the flagship Heritage. Very attractive looking mid 20th century design dress watch from Longines, as well as their Conquest Heritage as well. That is a design that I find just being so synonymous with vintage Longines. You see some great vintage examples of these floating out in the market, and I love just the distinctive design of those applied indices going across the dial. Any of the Heritage collection from Longines I think are great ones to go for. They're not watches that are going to probably be for everybody, but if you like this type of style and watches of this ilk, these are ones to look at. Now, I need to do a video on these watches because I really do think they're probably some of the most underappreciated watches from this brand in Tudor with the 1926s. So I think when people look at the marketing collateral and just positioning of these watches, they kind of are seen as more like blingy, kind of like affordable options from the Tudor line, which I don't think really tells the full story about the 1926, because if you start to get past like the diamond studded like dial designs from these, there actually are some of the best entry doors into Tudor as a brand. And if you go for like say the silver opaline style color dial with the blue markers, these are some, I think, really good unisex pieces that can be worn in a dressy environment. And considering that these can be had for under, say, $2,000 from a brand like Tudor, I think these are attractive pieces to go for. Also getting 100 meters of water resistance. Yes, you are getting an ETA-based caliber inside there, but still a lot to like, and it comes with the peace of mind of servicing. So if so many people are looking at the Black Bay, say like 36 as an example, I don't see why more people don't look at these. They are maybe a little bit more dressy in terms of their approach, but if I had to pick this or Royal, I would go for a 1926. I think it's a bit more, and it is safer in terms of its design, but that texturized finish, sharp looking, just markers on the dial, as well as getting a variety of case options to choose from. This is one that I think people should just look at a little bit further. Now, these ones will not be much of a surprise for those that have watched for some time, but I have to mention in this range with the Nomos kind of trio, the Orient, the Tangente, as well as the Ludwig. All 3 of these watches I think are probably some of the best just dress watches in the category for around 2,000 bucks, give or take. In terms of different size options to go for, different dial colors to go for, different variations from all these families, there's a lot to like here. My personal favorite is going to be the Orient. This was one of my first, I would say, proper watches that I purchased. Absolutely adore the thing still. It's kind of my dress watch that I wear when I'm just kind of going, wanting something that's very classic in its approach, while also kind of fusing kind of the contemporary form that Nomos does with many of their designs. Really the star of the show for these though is going to be the fact that what is taking place with the movement. These are, like I mentioned, going to be based in terms of the architecture off of the Bazoo 7001, but are being produced in-house with Nomos's proprietary components because they wanted to create really a vertically manufacturing system for themselves so they didn't have to rely on third-party providers to create these watches. In terms of a finishing standpoint, look absolutely fantastic. Some will, of course, always say, no, hey, these Nomos watches look pretty stale, or like they just look very safe. Nomos is one of those brands that's kind of a love it or hate it in terms of their design style. But these three watches, in terms of what you're going for, the Orient, if you want kind of more of the traditional applied markers and want that minimalist style approach, the Tangente being a bit more Bauhaus in its design with its use of typography with the numerals, and you also have the Ludwig using its Roman numerals kind of being a bit more classic, and I would say probably leaning away from more of the contemporary type of design that comes with Nomos just pieces in general, with of course a great movement with the Alpha manual inside of all three. So now to round out our list, I want to look at the Baume Mercier Clifton Baumatics. Now Baume Mercier has fallen on harder times right now, for being completely candid about things, and the brand I think is trying to figure out and navigate and get back to where the brand once was. In terms of what they're producing from a manufacturing standpoint with this watch, this is a really value-packed watch. In terms of what it's going for, my personal favorite is the blue dial variant. Kind of has that vignette style dial, but really where it's falling under $3,000 to get a proprietary movement inside of here produced by Richemont's manufacturing arm for movement production. You're getting a 5-day power reserve, cost certified movement. This is a watch that could be a daily driver and does have some, I would say, sporty tendencies in what it's going about. This is just like one of those watches that is just incredibly underrated when looking at it. And I don't think a lot of people look beneath the surface of what this watch is doing. I think if Baume Mercier can continue to adapt what is being done from a movement perspective in this watch and adapting it to other designs, it would probably really help the brand out. But if you're looking on the basis of a modern dress watch, under $3,000, this certainly is one of the better ones out there, no question. But all right, guys, that is a pretty comprehensive list of some of the best dress watches for under $3,000. Of course, could not mention all of them, so don't come after me too hard if I did forget to mention something. But love to see comments down below. What other dress watches would you include in this list? Also, if you want to partake in the giveaway, link in the description down below. Definitely take advantage of the book a call feature on our site to book a consultation. And also, if you want to stay up to date with the content, follow on Instagram as well. But guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.